Yes. No, it's so important that we think critically about what we are consuming right now. I was listening to an interview earlier this morning, and they were talking about the way in which our general approach to knowledge is one that is sort of steeped in being dumbed down. So I am very grateful that those of you who are doing the work at Capital B don't subscribe to that, and you make sure that
Oh
we
no.
have what it is that we need to know. And because we're heading into the dog days of summer, as folks say, now we are recording this prior. This is not a live conversation. We are recording this previous to the time that it's going to be aired. So I was really curious if you could help us understand what it is that our community members need to know when it comes to navigating the news going into the dog days of summer. We've had the Department of Education given permission to be dismantled from the Supreme Court. We've got mysterious lynching type sorts of deaths happening in random spaces across the country. We've got some environmental concerns. There's a whole host of questions about police brutality and misconduct. And there's so much to look at. I was hoping that you could perhaps guide us towards some of the main stories that you all are working on at Capital B and what it is that we need to be on the lookout for as consumers of news and consumers of journalism as we're preparing to go back to school, or some of us are sending kids to college, whatever it is. Give us a sense as to how we should approach our news consumption in this era that we find ourselves.
Listen, you and I are thinking so much alike on what the top stories are and what really matters. And a
Mhm.
lot of what you described is exactly what we're working on and talking about every day at Capital B. I think that one of the biggest things that I really want our community to pay attention to is climate change.
Mm.
I don't think that there's going to be a bigger story for this year. I
Wow.
think that the Texas floods have set the table for us. And I can tell you that my own phone has been popping off
Mm.
with flash flood alerts. And it is really scary because the town that I live in a few years ago, we had the flooding, which is the same as the town that you live in,
Mm.
of course.
At least
But
part
we
of the
had,
year.
right,
I
part of the year.
fluctuate.
Right. But we had the Hurricane Ida flooding in which two people died locally. Um, this is a I know President Trump characterized it as a 100-year phenomenon, but if it's a 100-year phenomenon, why is it happening every year?
Right. That part. That
I
part.
mean, we are not prepared for the level of change that is coming to our communities. And I just really appreciate that one of our reporters, Adam Mahoney, has been so on it in terms
Mm.
of covering these issues. He has covered, I'm gonna just tell you about two stories that he's doing right now that he's done recently that are really important environmentally. One is a story that's called "Why Are Black Neighborhoods Underwater?" Hello.
Ooh,
Right?
yes, yes,
Science
yes.
points to the wealthy. And basically, what he reported on was that this study showed that the richest Americans are causing 65% of global warming.
Oh my God. Wait, the
And
richest people on the planet or the richest
richest
Americans?
Americans, just the richest Americans, 65% of global warming. And as we know, global warming exacerbates. We've always had flash flooding, right? And there always will be. But global warming exacerbates that.
Wow.
And it's undeniable that this has extreme impacts on Black communities. No shade to Kerrville, and we know that that was a predominantly white community that was affected, and
Hmm.
obviously we support the victims of that, and our heart goes out to them. Mine does personally, um, and I think it's important for that story to be told too. I also don't want us to get it twisted because what we know is that Black folks are far more likely to die from these natural disasters.
Mm. You
Since
know what was
1999.
I
Yeah.
want to just pause you there, Kelly, because and then I want to come back to what was happening in 1999. But
Mhm.
you've mentioned a few things that have been a part of the conversation my husband and I have been having in the house because when those flash floods came, well, I was in D.C. At the time that there was the massive tornado flooding out of nowhere sort of situation, and that was sort of the remnants of the weather system that had been floating across the southeast.
Mhm.
And we were in D.C. preparing to go to Howard University, where my sorority was having an amazing organizing event. It was our national convention, and the whole thing had to be moved indoors, called off. We had to shelter in place, and we were out in our pretty red dresses and suits and sandals and looking cute. And I had an umbrella because I knew it was going to rain. Had no idea it was going to be that extreme. And then when I came home back to this community you and I were just talking about, and I went into because I live between both Brooklyn and out in the Jersey spaces. And so in the Jersey space, I was like, okay, my son knew I was coming in, and he knew I was coming in through Penn Station, and he knew that I was not going into Brooklyn after Penn Station. I was going into New Jersey, and he said, "Mom, don't travel. There's a flash flood." And I was like, "Oh, look at my baby worried about his mama." And then he was like, "No, really, don't travel." And I'm thinking, we're in New York City. Like, I'm not. What are you talking about? Girl, when I saw the flood water videos ravaging through the subway system, even down on the South Street Seaport, which from Superstorm Sandy, I had thought was under massive reconstruction. There was a whole bunch of work that was happening that was supposed to make sure that the one train, and that's the number one line for those of you who are not in New York City, which is sort of, it traverses an area of southern Manhattan that is very prone to flooding and was almost shut down for an extended period of time during Superstorm Sandy and Ida. And it was amazing to me to see that all these many years later, the floodwaters poured into the subway were coming into the train station. And so my
and into the cars.
into the cars. And so it was shocking to me. And then I thought, okay, well, that's the South Street Seaport. Look at me rationalizing how this isn't that big of a deal. And then I get into New Jersey, and I'm getting more images from places, Plainfield, New Jersey, waist high water, which is like 30, 40 minutes from where
in Plainfield. Two people died in Plainfield.
My God, it was shocking to me because what happened in New Jersey and Manhattan, it wasn't supposed to be. Like, we didn't get flood warnings that said, there's a weather system that's several days out that's coming in. It was like, no, there's going to be rain. There's going to be, I don't think that we realized how extreme it was going to be until we found ourselves trapped in subway stations and sheltering in place.
It's tough right now. I mean, I think that it's just no more important thing for Black leaders and people in predominantly Black communities to make
Wow.
sure that they're at the table and part of these regional conversations about climate change, and making sure that whatever needs to happen to keep the community safe from the impacts of this it's that we're doing it. So
That's
yeah.
insane. Because it sounds like, from what you said before, if wealthy Americans are causing 60% of the world's negative realities as it pertains to climate
Yeah,
change,
65%.
then the rest of us who are living among wealthy Americans, but who are not ourselves wealthy, it feels like we're sort of just having to dodge their raindrop bullets. Because when I'm
Right.
thinking about, like, we've had Adam Mahoney on before, brilliant reporter. I'm so glad he's a part of your team. And one of the things that he's talked with us about, stories coming out of Louisiana with Cancer Alley, and there was some litigation and forward movement and efforts from, let's be clear, Black people in Cancer Alley in Louisiana. And then we find out just a few weeks ago that the Trump administration basically ended up dismissing or moving to dismiss those lawsuits. So even though Black people had been organizing and doing the work of trying to ameliorate some of the negative impacts of climate change caused by wealthy Americans who own these corporations that were polluting in Cancer Alley, their ability to do so through the legal maneuvers that are available to us were cut off by the administration itself. When I'd asked you to talk about things we need to be concerned about, oddly, climate change was not a part of my mind, and I'm a little ashamed of that right now.
I mean, it is huge. I am really concerned about the level of flooding that is taking place. And it's not just in the United States. Like, I think that's another thing that I get from my experience having covered international news at the New York Times, is that I have my finger on the pulse of all these different climate disasters. And
Wow.
the same thing happened a few weeks ago in Tokyo. Like, it
Wow.
is really, things are just really popping off. And just looking at what we need to do to get prepared is super important. And I just wanted to say one more thing about
Sure.
something that's flying under the radar. If you're in Tennessee or you're in Memphis, right? But have you guys heard about what's taking place in Memphis with Black folks organizing to protect
Child.
themselves against the new supercomputer there?
We had Representative
Can I talk
Justin
about that?
Pearson on. Please, but we had just Representative Justin Pearson on to talk about it briefly. But it's been a couple of weeks, and for those who may have missed that conversation, talk to us about what we need to know, because this is very much in the heartbeat of climate change as well.
It is. It very much is. So let me just lay out a little bit of the background. So basically, right now across America, some of the biggest tech companies in the world are building supercomputers, and many of them are being situated in Black communities. One of the questions that we're trying to understand is exactly how many of them, and we're trying to document that.
Wow.
But right now, we're doing this on a case by case basis. And so currently in Memphis, Elon Musk's company is building a supercomputer that is designed to train his new AI, Grok,
The
which is
racist AI, the one that be creating new
the
racist memes.
anti-woke, what he's described as the anti-woke AI.
Mm,
Right. So, Black communities are outraged about it, particularly those in where it is being located, which is in South Memphis, because South Memphis is already plagued with many environmental issues.
wow.
Um, there are so many polluting, smokestacks in that region of the city,
Mm,
and people are really upset about it. So because these supercomputers, forgot to say this, but these supercomputers really emit a lot of toxic air.
mm.
So basically, the community has really been organizing to fight this, and I think it's an example of solutions that we are building ourselves in this
Wow.
moment. And I really feel like it's a story that people need to check out and understand. The NAACP's recently filed an intent to sue against the company, saying that they had not filed the correct permits
Mm.
for constructing this. We were not able to get a statement back from the company, so I can't say what they've said about it. But I can say that this is definitely a story that's worth following. I think it's a huge one for our times because the construction, all of these things that are taking place with global warming are happening at the same time as AI is developing. And the
Mm.
convergence of those two things can really have a huge impact on our communities and our quality of life inside of them.
Let's stick with that for just a minute because you're actually also touching on something that I am personally feeling very conflicted about. We've had folks on the show and we've had conversations about how if you don't understand AI, then you're going to be left in the dust, and if you don't understand how to use artificial intelligence and the machines, whether it's Chat GPT or Grok, which is the pro racism, they call it anti woke, I call it the pro Nazi artificial intelligence device that Elon Musk has created. But in Tennessee in particular, one of the things that has been impossible for me to ignore is the reality of what these supercomputers bring. Because I know some of you hear, oh, well, they're just building a supercomputer. What's the big deal? So, Kelly, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the environmental impact of a supercomputer system that is designed to support artificial intelligence is that every time you send an inquiry into a Chat GPT, a Grok, a Claude, or whatever you want, a Suzy Q, Ask Alicia, which is the Black AI that we've been talking about with a number of folks who are behind and supporting that, because we want for us, by us, and if there's going to be a space created, we want there to be a Black space. But even when Ask Alicia, when we had them on, I was like, but we got to unpack this a little bit. So we're having a longer conversation there. But my understanding is every time you submit an inquiry into an artificial intelligence portal, that the level of calculations and the level of information that the artificial intelligence is able to pull together is phenomenal in what it can produce, assuming it's accurate, and we should never make that assumption. But that inquiry in and of itself consumes an extraordinary amount of water. AI computers are very thirsty because they generate so much heat in order to pull all of that information together. And when I say they thirsty. So just people typing into Chat GPT, hey Chat girl, how you doing? Because I know people are now using artificial intelligence as almost like a pseudo diary. Yeah, a buddy. Yeah. But when you buddy up with a Chat GPT, you just drank like 3 cups of water that nobody else will get to drink, because once it runs through those systems, because it needs water to cool itself off because it generates so much heat in responding to your hey girl. So if you Kelly type into one of these machines, hey girl, how you doing? And the machine writes back, I'm all right today. How are you? I was thinking about what you went on, what happened in your schedule yesterday. Here's some information we can use to make your schedule today better. That just drank like 2 gallons of water. And we already are now experiencing a water crisis, and we are building these thirsty ass computers that drink more water than humans consume. We don't drink enough water for our human bodies. We're supposed to be, 8 cups a day? Half of us can't approach half of that amount, and we are literally spending fresh water to cool off computers to give us information about how to make an email sound better. Do I have that right, Kelly? Because please, I don't want to miss it. I just want to make sure
that's
I'm clear.
that's exactly right. I mean, the numbers in terms of exactly how much is, used when you type in a
Right, 2
particular
gallons
query
versus a quart. Right.
right, right, right. But I mean, I also want to say that we don't have an anti-AI stance. Like, that's not where we're going with this. It's our role to help people understand the context in which these things are taking place. And
Mm,
so a part of that context is undoubtedly that these computers use a ton of aquifer water. They're
wow.
using, we are using water that we, we're mortgaging our future
Wow.
water to create this, to create
And
this.
Memphis sits
And
on top of an aquifer, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure about that fact. I'm not saying that it's not true, but I don't know myself.
Okay, I'm going to search this out while you're talking because I feel like
Okay.
Justin Pearson said something about that because there's an aquifer that they were very concerned about preserving. But go ahead, I'll find that and then we'll circle back around to it.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's not just the water. I mean, the other thing that I wanted to say about what's taking place with AI and how it's impacting our communities is the energy cost. So
Mm.
a big part of what's taking place is that the AI centers, these supercomputers use a lot of energy. I can't even like characterize exactly how much it is, but we're talking about the energy demands are so great that power companies are having to build new forms of infrastructure to
Oh my
support the
God.
construction of these. And so in the state of Georgia, where we have a newsroom in Atlanta, one of the things that we've been reporting on is the way in which Georgia's energy prices have been going up. Did you know that like people in Georgia have been paying an extra $500 to $600 a year in
What?
energy? Yes, in energy bills. And there's a big debate going on, and even an election. I think yesterday was the last day to do early voting, and there's going to be another election in November related to it for a board that makes decisions about raising energy rates.
Wow.
But yeah, $500 to $600 a year. And there's this big debate going on about how much construction of supercomputers is contributing to this increase. The power company is saying, no, we're not raising prices because of that. But many activists and organizers are saying, yes, you are.
Mm.
And it's something that has a lot of communities and people upset because people feel like not only are they paying bearing the burden, but they're also paying the cost.
This is horrifying. We're going to have to do some investigation into that. Get to have just an entire episode to talk about that because rising energy costs at a time when, in the big, horrible, terrible bill, I have a very profane name for it, but you're a very respectable woman, and I don't want to infuse all that profanity into this conversation. But I have a name for
Let
that big
loose,
bill.
let loose.
It's the big bitch ass bill, Kelly. That's what I call it. It's the big bitch ass bill. And in the big bitch ass bill, they basically also ended a lot of subsidies that were designed to help low income and moderate income Americans pay for the energy costs that are increasing. And so they're paying additional costs. They're losing out on the benefits that used to exist that would help defer those costs, all to power energy when you've got these corporations that are now building supercomputers that aren't just also drinking up our water, they're also consuming our energy supply.